Good morning. Happy Saturday. Tyranny of the courts. The tyranny of the courts. What the fuck is tyranny of the courts? You know, I spend a lot of my time at courts. I was at court yesterday for 6 hours. 6 hours of my day was spent at court. And I didn't see any tyranny. I don't even know how you could see tyranny. I'm getting a lot of idiots, and they're just knuckle dragging, window licking, retarded idiots who are telling me that this Arizona prohibition against filming on courthouse grounds, and it is a prohibition about filming on courthouse grounds. It is specifically at locations. So I'm not entirely sure how people think that it could apply to someone across the street filming through a doorway, but I guess I'm just not the legal genius that some of these morons are. But that said, these idiots think somehow keeping people from filming on courthouse grounds is going to prevent them from uncovering all that dirty, nasty, bad judicial tyranny. Now, there is this place called the real world, and in the real world there is no judicial tyranny. And I say no, meaning #not all. I asked one of these morons what he meant by judicial tyranny, and he said, well, this one time a judge tasered somebody, and we wouldn't have known about it but for the video. And whether or not a judge tasered somebody, I don't care. But would we have known about it but for the video? Well, in every courtroom I've ever been in, there has been at a minimum 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 people. I guess technically it could be 4 people if it's an ex parte, but there's been at least 5 people just about every time I've been in a courtroom. There's the judge, there are the 2 parties or their representatives, that's 3. There's a bailiff, that's 4. There's a court clerk, that's 5. So if there are 5 people in there and one of them gets tasered, there are 4 witnesses. There may be a court reporter who would be transcribing it. There may be, I don't know what kind of case it was. If it was a criminal prosecution, there should have been a public defender or some other defense counsel. What are you sniffing at? And there's also the peanut gallery in the back where people can be observing or waiting for their turn. Most criminal convictions are made without the benefit of video evidence. So to suggest that but for video we never would have uncovered this is a crock of shit. And every time you get some sovereign citizen retard in court poorly recording with his cell phone, making lots of crackling noises and shuffling noises and just making it generally impossible to listen to, all you hear are the sov sit retards getting schooled by judges. You never hear any tyranny. Now, here's in the real world the way it works. When you go into court, there are everybody who has an interest in the matter, generally speaking, is going to be either present or represented in court. If it's a class action lawsuit, they're just going to be represented in court. But, you know, if it's a dissolution, if it's a criminal matter, everybody who has a interest in that case is going to be at court, who has an interest in the outcome. And I mean a real, like, legal interest in the outcome, not just I'm curious about it interest, for those of you who try to get too pedantic. So they are there. If there are any shenanigans, they know what to do. They can appeal. They can petition for a writ of some sort. It is a system that is designed to be somewhat self-correcting. Now, the only person in that room who is taking part in those proceedings who doesn't have an interest is going to be the judge, because he doesn't fucking care. Win or lose, he doesn't get paid more if you win. He doesn't get paid less if you lose. He doesn't care. All he wants to do is make sure the justice is, I mean, maybe he's lazy and he just wants to get done with your bullshit, but generally speaking, the judge, his only interest is in making sure that justice is somehow served. Now, he may guess wrong, and that's where appeals come in. That's where you take your little court transcript, assuming you're smart enough to get one, and you march your happy ass over to the Court of Appeals and you file your brief for an appeal on his decision, or petition for a writ, depending on whether or not it's a final order, blah, blah, blah. You get what I'm saying. And then the appeals court will determine if there were any egregious mistakes of fact. If the judge believes the police officer and not you, that's not an egregious mistake of fact, even if you know in your heart that you were right and the cop was wrong. The appeals court isn't going to overturn that. But if the lower court, if the trial court makes a determination of fact that is completely unsupported by the evidence that was submitted, or if they make a determination of fact contrary to all of the evidence that was submitted, if all the evidence submitted, all of it says that the perpetrator was 6'2", and the judge makes a determination that the perpetrator was 5'8", when there is no factual evidence, not even testimony, because testimony is evidence for all of you morons who think that witness testimony isn't evidence. It is, just so you're aware. So if he makes an order contrary to all of the evidence, but if one witness says, you know what, the perpetrator was 5'8", and the judge chooses, or the trier of fact, if it's a jury, chooses to believe that one witness over all the other evidence, well, that might not get disturbed. It probably won't. Appellate courts are very loath to disturb the findings, the factual findings of trial courts, because the trial court was there, the trial court saw the evidence, has nothing to gain either way by his determinations of fact, or the jury has nothing to gain, presumably, by their determinations of who's right and who's wrong, which facts to believe and which facts not to believe. And they're there so they can judge the credibility better of witnesses, etc. So generally speaking, findings of fact aren't overturned, but they can be if they're egregious. Findings of law, overturned all the time. All the time. That's why we have very busy courts of appeal, at least in California, and I'm not sure about your state. So if there is an error in law, that doesn't mean that the judge is being tyrannical, because he probably found for one of the two parties. So one party is going to think it's tyrannical, the other party is going to think that it was the right finding of law. You are incapable. If you think that courts are tyrannical, you are incapable of perspective. You're lost in your little sob-sit bullshit world. So then if the Court of Appeals gets it wrong, then presumably you can continue on up to whatever Supreme Court, theoretically. Typically, it's my understanding that most states, their Supreme Courts have the right to choose which cases. They get to select which cases they hear, so they might not hear yours. But you get a couple bites at the apple. So I don't know what tyranny you think exists. If you think it's the court clerks, they stamp papers. They might review the papers to make sure that you're turning in the right ones, or that they're completed, not properly completed, but completed. Did you sign it where you were supposed to sign it? Did you date it? Do you have all the little boxes filled in? That kind of stuff. They're not there to give you legal advice. And sometimes they could be terrible people. and argue with attorneys who know what the fuck they're trying to do and why they're doing it. But beyond that, I mean, they just stamp papers that filed, received, endorsed, whatever, they stamp them. That's all they do. There's no tyranny there. Oh, they charged me a filing fee. Oh no, tyranny. It's pretty stupid. The courts, the state spends a lot more money on the courts than any filing fees cost. So, and then what you're going to do from, I mean, you couldn't, before this particular order was enacted, you could not film in Arizona courtrooms without permission of the judge. You still cannot film in Arizona courtrooms without the permission of the judge. It's changed nothing on what happens in any part of the building that you had access to. It changed nothing. You didn't have access to the judge's private chambers or anything like that, so that never changed. And I don't know what tyranny you think could go on back there. I mean, they're just reviewing case law. They're just reviewing practice guides. They're judicial practice guides, bench guides for judges that give them an idea of how to do certain procedural things and what to look for, etc. But anyway, I am still very curious to know what exact, with specificity, what tyranny that filming in a courthouse can uncover that would not otherwise be uncovered. Well, first of all, that is in fact tyranny, and second, that would not otherwise be uncovered through the transcript, through the official record, the clerk's transcript, the court's transcript, whatever you need to do. But I'd love to know what kind of tyranny you'd uncover. And as for why I like it that the courts don't allow filming, well, I've covered that multiple times. But there are times where you have to discuss things with your client that unscrupulous people could record because microphones work better than ears do. They could be more sensitive. And you have to speak loud enough so that a person can hear, which is louder than a microphone needs in order for it to record you. So that's the biggest thing. There are other reasons. There are proceedings which should be closed to the public in general. I was in a closed proceeding yesterday because it was dealing with sensitive issues, and the court was sensitive to those sensitive issues. Sensitive, and they closed the court so that the parties could talk freely. And a lot of times parties will say, like in family law, you can't, in California anyway, nothing that you say in family law can be used as slander or libel. But if someone records it and then takes it out on the street, then could it? I mean, it's not slander or libel because you have to be free to say what you need to say. And you know, that record is going to stay with the court. It's not going to be distributed. But now all of a sudden, if, you know, wife is accusing husband of having a poop fetish or whatever, all of a sudden that can get spread out. So that's my point. Take it or leave it. Like it or love it. Have a great day.